Okay, welcome everybody. So I am here today on June 15th, my time, June 16th, Filipino time, with Michael Angelo Mahinay. Mahinay.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes. Great.
And I'm happy to have a discussion with him about his work. And the way that this will go is we'll have a brief introduction, and then we'll talk about the Death Galleon and some of the other work that he's doing. And then we'll talk about his creative process. So it's my honor and pleasure to welcome you today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
All right. So, what we'd like to talk about is a little bit about your background. And when you submitted, you had said that you were born on
Yeah.
the island of Cebu in the Philippines, raised
Yes.
on video games and cartoons, and grew up on stories of magic and monsters both in and outside of the country. And your short stories, Motherland and Nimrod Yamsuan and the Abyssal Emissary, are some of the fruits of the knowledge that you've gained on Philippine mythology and folklore during your days as a student at the University of San Carlos. So he is currently holed up in a house in Kabankalan, with his mother and poodle Jack studying up on plumbing and the paranormal while also teaching English to students in Japan. You can find him on Instagram with Jack with a Pack at Jack with a Pack. Okay, so welcome, Michelangelo. Talk to me a little bit first of all about where we would meet at the dessert table at the Filipino buffet. It's my
Hmm.
favorite question.
Let's see. Well, I guess we would go probably. So if you're gonna, so my favorite dessert is probably one I don't really get to try that often. It's leche flan. It's
Oh, such a
si-
hard thing to
yeah,
make.
yeah, yeah. Because my mom really doesn't really like sweet stuff, so I don't really get to try it a lot that much. So we generally pass that over. The only time I do get to try it is if I'm at a buffet. So yeah.
I know. That's why we're going when we go. Have you seen that meme where the grandmas are like, it's not, what is it, Asian grandma? Like, it's okay. It's a little sweet. It's not too sweet. And their eyes are like really big. So
Oh yeah, yeah.
cute.
That's how my mom. I've seen that before. That sums up how my mom reacts when it comes to food. It's not just the sweet food. It's like anything with strong flavors. She's generally like not. She's very averse to that. But she's old, so she has to watch her sugar and salt intake. So it's understandable. Yeah.
I know. It's everyone's mom. Well, okay. So I would love to talk a little bit about your inspiration, because I know for our readers and particularly our writers who are submitting, they're interested in your creative process. So I wanted to talk with you a bit about how you found your inspiration and how the story evolved, and especially around this idea that the Death Galleon is set in a land called Hinira, where magic and monsters work together as Salamanquero and Abian. So yeah, tell me a little bit about this and how you would pitch it and how it came about.
Oh, it's very so. Yeah, my bio pretty much already gives an idea about where the inspiration comes from. So Hinira is actually just the Philippine. It's just an alternate setting. It's just an alternate name for the Philippines. It's full. It's sometimes I often describe it as the as an archipelago. So, and then the idea of the Salamanquero and the Abian came out because of again, I like video games, and one of the video games that I grew up with, and I'm pretty sure some people were probably getting this vibe already the moment they kind of noticed, I guess, towards the last part of the story, where we see a bunch of creatures where we see a bunch of creatures come, supernatural creatures emerge. Now the inspiration for this one was actually Pokemon. Yes, Salamanquero is a magician, and the concept of an Abian in Filipino mythology often refers to a spirit familiar. I just decided to put that in a more modern context that would be easy to understand even for people who are not really familiar with Filipino mythology. And Pokemon has always had this always has always taken inspiration from real worlds, Hawaii, the UK, the Iberian Peninsula, to name just a few. And the idea for the Death Galleon itself, the titular ship that came about, was actually from another popular game called The Legend of Zelda. Specifically, it's a very old game I think it was in the early 2000s. The name of the game was Phantom Hourglass, which revolves around a ghost ship, which is where I got the inspiration for the Death Galleon. But it's not just video games that actually inspired the Death Galleon. You see, the region Hinira is like just like the real Philippines today. Hinira is divided into three regions. We have San Luz, which is representing Luzon. We have Tabusa, the middle area, for the Visayas, and Indomos for Mindanao. The Death Galleon generally takes place in the Tabusa region because and it's actually referencing one of the three, as you know, in Philippine, the evolution of Filipino folklore has said that has Filipino folklore has evolved with Christianity, and one of the most interesting adaptation, one of the most significant adaptations were the Marias. The Marias were created from goddesses, and when the Spanish tried to convert us to Christianity, they kind of just changed some of these goddesses into diwatas, and one of those diwatas was Maria Cacao, who is one of the most vague. I mean, when I say vague, I mean we don't really know which god she was based off of. We just know that she lives in Argao, near Argao, and she uses a ship to deliver, I guess, cacao beans, or cacao. Yeah, she uses a ship to deliver cacao. The ship is said to be some kind of galleon. In some interpretations, this galleon is said to be, is said to collect souls. So that's where the Death Galleon part is inspired from. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. I mean, I don't want to spoil. I want people to buy the book, but I have so much to talk about with you because my own uncle told me that he would see a galleon coming into the bay where he lived. And I wrote my own set of stories about this. And also, like what you were saying with the three regions, it's very much embedded into, I mean, our DNA, that idea of the tripartite approach. And then to echo what you were saying about we don't know. I don't even know what my name was, Michael. And my last name is Flores, but that's a Spanish name. What was my name prior? What was my family's name? The Spanish took so much. They took our religion, changed it over, made it a little more palatable to them. And I think that some of our writers and poets are taking this opportunity to reimagine our legacy and our history, which I love. I love it. I think that's needed in a time of being adrift, is carrying on to the guy. And okay, let's go also back to the creatures. So the sense of a familiar, I think this crosses many cultures, don't you think? Having
Yes.
a familiar. Mm-hmm.
It's like in witchcraft. We have generally every culture generally has that concept of it, of having a companion around you, with you.
Yeah, and so I remember the Golden Compass. It had everybody has a little, demon that stays with them. And as you're younger, it takes shape, but then it comes and becomes your opposite side. If you're shy, maybe it's a little more bold. If you're loud, maybe it's a little more quiet. And so that's idea of not so much duality, but encompassing a whole approach to ourselves, to our humanity. Through the spirit world, or through our familiars. So exciting. So exciting. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about how did you generate this creativity? Coming from the video games, coming from how you grew up, but how do you turn that into the written word? Are there any places? Are there any routines you have?
It's kind of simple when you're the thing is, when you're talking about video games, especially since these two IPs that inspired this story are actually owned by a Japanese company. One of the, Zelda and Pokemon are under the Nintendo label. And as we know, Nintendo is a Japanese company, and Japanese are very particular about their copyrights. So for a lot of people, it's generally you can't really base a lot. You can't really direct. For a lot of people, they think, oh, I can't really base it off of this stuff because they might notice, and there might be some legal actions, there might be some legal issues with that. But the thing is, it isn't really that difficult at all when you when you're talk about it in a creative sense, because you're taking inspiration from it, you're not copying it. So when I first thought about like which from the idea of familiars, I thought, oh, this is very Pokemon coded. So I thought to myself, I could make like a Pokemon like story, which there are a lot actually. They call this genre literary RPGs, and there are a lot of them available. You can, if you look hard enough, you'll probably find a few. Yeah. And the idea of the Zelda inspiration didn't really come until later into the story, when I realized that because Pokemon is a game about exploring the world as a 10-year-old. And of course, when I wrote during my like initial drafts of the story, I was of that world, of that story, of that whole world, I was like, okay, this isn't gonna work in a book. We need to change a few things. I needed to put in higher stakes. And for Zelda is a very medieval, is based on like classical fantasy. So of course the stakes were much easier to implement from there on. There's a lot of inspiration to be drawn from it. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. I mean, I think that's one of the things we can often find folks who are getting their start with their own kind of like fanfic or in a world that exists, and then developing their own ideas. But I mean, the stories are all the same. We all have the same stories. We all have parents, we have children, we have relatives, we have high stakes, we have adventure. There's only what, four main stories that way people literature works. And I think even if something like, Star Wars and Harry Potter are pretty much the same theme, then any Filipino can take the elements of any of the existing and make it our own. And that's what I appreciate and enjoy, is you are taking themes and then making it distinctly, uniquely Filipino, which I love.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's a message out there to all of you. My hope is with this series and the others, we can continue to find and have a compendium of authors, emerging, debut, upcoming, established, and start to have more stories about Pinoy topics.
Yes, yes, yes. Of course.
Well, what about well, I want to talk a little bit more about inspiration from the past. So do you find that, like, do you read, you talked about reading quite a lot or researching some of the past history. I mean, are there particular texts or the particular things that you would recommend? Let's say if somebody was interested in exploring more of these source texts or source information, not even text, because we might not have had text.
Well, um, I wonder. Most of the. You see, the thing is with one of the challenges when I wrote this story was like, how accurate is this to like the actual to the source material? Because even though it's my own interpretation of the Philippines, I still have to tie it in to the real world somehow. And a lot of the times, I generally most of my information is from researching online, and whether it's blog posts. And one of the most prominent sources was the Aswang project. So that was also one thing that was pretty. So even though they're pretty legit, so as far as I can tell, there's still always going to be that there's always going to be that caveat of of someone coming up and saying, actually, this is not really what happened, like that. People, I mean, there's a lot
Yeah.
of stories that are there's a lot of folklore that are hoaxes.
Sure.
I've heard about that actually. Yeah.
Well,
So
okay. Let's go, like, set back. Okay, so it might not be historically accurate, but it's our fantasy. Like, no one is jumping down and saying Harry Potter is inaccurate. I mean, come on. I think
I
we can
think
come up with our own explorations of even what a Bakunawa looks like, even what an Aswang feels and smells and appears like. We can come up with our own. That's fiction.
yeah, but sometimes it's like it's an interpretation, but some people often say some people tend to, like, I don't know, conflate it with, like, the actual traditions. So there's still a bit of there's a lot of foggy ground to navigate on. So it's sometimes when I write a story, I sometimes like get stuck because I feel like I'm walking on too many eggshells and it might crack and like that. But sometimes I just feel like but sometimes I also feel like, you know what? I can just do my own thing. But there's always have to be a help. But I always try to like find this balance between those two parts of me. You know, those two parts of me that are always in conflict. So I'm always trying to find that balance to make sure, I can just find a story that is entertaining and motivates people to see, oh, you know what? Wonder what this is based on.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. Exactly. It's so funny. I had an editor who worked on my stuff and she was like, I haven't found a place called Mindor. And I was like, oh, that's an imaginary term I came up with myself. Similarly, they asked, what are these sea chants? Are they like this with a link to, North England here in New England, sea shanties? And I was like, actually, no, it's more like this. And I was showing her like the Babaylan version of the indigenous kind, Cordilleras. So we can come up with new imaginative things. We can have them based in historical records, and we can also create new worlds from our own imagination.
Mm.
Full stop. All right. Well, golly, we're at the end almost. I just had a couple more questions. So, one second to last question, penultimate question. So, what message do you think you would like our readers to take away long after they've closed the page?
Expect more. There's going to be, this is just part. I wrote a story. I wrote a full novel about this before I submitted the short story. So yeah, I have a plan to basically submit more on this story, more on this, more on Hinira, and you will see more of these Abyan. Yes. So, we, especially if you're, and my challenge also for anybody, if you're a fan, and in the future, if you're gonna, in the future, I hope you will find the time to read and find all the abyan that I'm going to be putting in there. Because, Pokemon is about catching them all. In this case, we'll just, see if you can find them all.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. We need the little app or the bingo card or the little stamp. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, thank you, everybody. Oh, one last one. So what's next? What's next for you? Beyond Abyan. Yeah.
Well, I'm actually working on another story right now, which is also Nintendo based. If anybody probably, which is also based on a popular Nintendo story. It's about two sisters. Probably already that should give away some idea of as to what game that's based on. And it's also based on Philippine mythology. And it sort of takes place, yeah, it's pretty much Philippine mythology. It's supposed to be like aimed for like younger audiences. So it's not too much. There's not too much. There's a lot, but it's not going to be too much. So yeah, I am also working on that as well.
Wonderful. Well, we're at the end of our time. Thank you so much for joining us. And for folks who are listening in, you can grab a link to buy Galleon Dreaming at dilimpress.com and wherever books are sold in October 2027. You can find Jack with a Pack, just as it sounds, with 2 Ks in there, on Instagram. And yeah, thank you so much for your time. It's just so wonderful to communicate with you. Thank you for your patience and for your trust in us. And I'm so looking forward to sharing the Death Galleon with the world.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yours in collaboration.